If I say I don't want to be a mentor, I look bad. If I say I do want to be a mentor, then I look like an idiot that doesn't care about being good and playing football. So it's one of those questions that no matter what I say, you guys can write what you want to write about it. And there's a lot of questions like that. That's why you end up having to try to avoid them. I tend to try to be honest. And I've said I'm not a mentor. I play football. And in a quarterback room, there's a lot of times there's been a ton of times where there's learning experiences, and I have a lot of experience and I can talk on things, and hopefully they listen.
There was a time when quarterback competitions actually meant something, where talent, not titles, determined who earned the huddle. But in Cleveland, that illusion has crumbled. Behind closed doors, a different kind of game has been playing out. One not based on competition, but control. And it just took a sharp turn. Joe Flacco, a name that carries weight in any locker room, has officially peeled back the curtain. What he revealed wasn't rumor, wasn't speculation, it was confirmation. Shedeur Sanders isn't just being overlooked, he's being boxed out. From the very first snap of training camp, the writing was already on the wall, and the ones holding the pen weren't coaches, they were executives. From the outside, it looked like a three-man battle. Gabriel, the early favorite, Flacco, the veteran fallback, Sanders, the intriguing rookie. But beneath the surface, the reps were never divided with fairness in mind. While fans were fed lines about open competition, something very different was happening on the field. Sanders, by all internal accounts, has been one of the sharpest performers in camp. Quick decision-making, strong mechanics, undeniable leadership, everything you'd expect from someone ready to take the reins. But instead of rewarding that, the Browns have quietly sidelined him. Not because of performance, but politics. During camp, first-team reps weren't earned, they were handed out based on preference. Gabriel consistently ran with the starters. Flacco got his scheduled drives, and Sanders, scout team, third string, left in the shadows, while highlight reels conveniently cropped him out of the narrative. You didn't see him in press clips. You didn't hear his name in team segments. And that silence? It wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Ownership didn't just distance themselves from Sanders. They openly admitted he wasn't their pick. That admission alone dismantled the entire competition. It turned a supposed meritocracy into a performance. It redefined what this preseason really is. Not a test of skill, but a campaign to maintain control. Coaches followed the script. Executives enforced the pecking order. And Sanders was left to operate in the margins. Even as his reps were tight, his throws on point, his pocket presence unfazed, the doors to opportunity remained closed. While Gabriel struggled with consistency and Flacco simply managed reps, Sanders never had a real shot. Those watching practice footage saw it. The stark contrast in energy when Sanders stepped in. The way receivers responded, the crispness in the offense. It was all there. But when the internal politics are louder than the film, even the best performances get buried. What made Flacco's comments so seismic was not just the message, but the messenger. A Super Bowl MVP, known for staying above the drama, decided to speak out. Not in vague terms, not in whispers, but with clarity. He laid out the imbalance, the favoritism, the deception, and in doing so, shattered whatever narrative the Browns were trying to protect. The truth is, the Browns didn't anticipate Sanders being this ready. They brought him in, expecting a long-term project, a player to groom quietly, but instead, they got a competitor, someone who refused to stay in the background, someone who demanded attention not with words, but with play. And that scared them. Inside the building, the energy has shifted. Players talk in hushed tones about the unfairness. Coaches dodge questions they use to answer confidently. Media teams avoid putting Sanders in clips because they know it would contradict the narrative. Everything about this quarterback battle now feels staged, because it is. It's not just about playing favorites, it's about preserving hierarchy. Flacco's place is secure. Gabriel was groomed to lead. Sanders, he disrupts that entire blueprint. And for a franchise obsessed with image control, disruption isn't welcome. Yet Sanders hasn't flinched. He hasn't aired grievances. He hasn't thrown teammates under the bus. He shows up. He executes, he encourages, but you can see the wear, not because of performance, but the absence of recognition, the weight of being ready and still not being called upon. That's a different kind of exhaustion. And now, with everything Flacco has said, there's no turning back. The story's out. The excuses won't stick. The fans aren't blind. They see the decisions. They see the inconsistency. And they're asking the same question over and over again. Why is the best option not being given a chance? Other teams are watching too. Across the league, front offices are taking notes. They're analyzing every throw Sanders gets, every missed opportunity Cleveland hands him, because in this league, quarterbacks don't sit in the shadows for long. And if Cleveland won't let him shine, someone else will. The Browns had a chance to develop a future face of their franchise. But instead of embracing that, they chose to suffocate it, and now they're trapped in their own design. Either they open the door for Sanders to truly compete, or they become the team that let a star walk because they were afraid of being wrong. The fallout has already begun. Internally, fingers are being pointed. Coaches say the reps were planned by the front office. The front office claims they're just trusting the staff. And all the while, Sanders remains on the outside, left to wait for a door that may never open. What makes this moment so critical is what it represents. It's not just a quarterback dilemma, it's a cultural one. A test of whether Cleveland can finally do what's right over what's comfortable, whether they can recognize a mistake and fix it, or whether they'll once again bury potential under politics. The league doesn't forget moments like these. Neither do players, and neither do fans. Because when you have a player who's earned the right to be seen, who's worked, who's waited, who's won in silence, and you still shut him out, what message does that send? That's the real story here. Not about schemes or systems, but about fairness, about how talent is handled when it comes from unexpected places, about whether this team is willing to evolve or determined to protect the old way of doing things. Every practice Sanders spends on the sideline, while others struggle in front of cameras, only reinforces what Flacco already exposed, that this wasn't a fair fight. It was a play, written long before training camp began. But plays can be rewritten, stories can change. If the Browns have the courage to admit what's happening, they can still make this right. Give Sanders the first team reps, put him in the spotlight. Let football, not fear, decide who leads. Because if they don't, the ending is already written, and it's not one Cleveland wants to read again. There's a silent war happening inside that facility, not between players, not even between coaches, but between performance and perception, between what the film says and what the decision makers want it to say. Every day Shedeur Sanders walks into that building, he's not just preparing for practice, he's walking into a power struggle. And the strange thing, he's not even fighting back, not out loud, not in interviews, not on social media. He's playing the long game, letting his work speak, letting others fumble over themselves, trying to explain why someone doing everything right is still getting pushed down. That quiet strength is probably what's making some people in the building even more nervous, because if he were complaining, they could write him off. If he were lashing out, they could spin the narrative. But silence paired with excellence is impossible to control. And now, thanks to Joe Flacco, that silence has a megaphone. What Flacco did wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. A veteran quarterback, no longer playing the politics game, looked at the situation and told the truth. No fluff, no filters, just facts. He said what the reps look like. He said who's getting what, and more importantly, he said it's not fair. And if you know how the NFL works, that kind of honesty isn't common, especially from someone with that kind of resume. This wasn't a media guy guessing. It wasn't a fan theorizing. This was someone in the room, on the field, seeing it firsthand, saying it's not about performance, it's about preference. That should have sparked change. That should have forced the Browns to reassess. But instead, the response has been silence, maybe even panic. Emergency meetings behind closed doors, excuses whispered to beat reporters, but no real action, no one addressing the core problem. Sanders still isn't getting a real shot. Meanwhile, reps continue to shape perception. Every throw Gabriel makes is filmed. Every huddle he leads gets posted. Joe Flacco's presence is used to hype the quarterback room. And Sanders? He might as well be invisible, not even a background appearance. No clips, no sound bites, no acknowledgement. That doesn't happen by accident. It's calculated. It's image management. It's the kind of thing teams do when they're trying to protect a narrative they know is fragile. And it tells you everything you need to know about what's really going on behind the scenes. Because if Shedeur Sanders were underperforming, they'd show it. If he were struggling to read defenses, missing throws, failing to command the huddle, they'd leak that, but they can't, because he's not. So instead, they hide him. They pretend he's not there, and they hope no one asks questions. But now people are asking. The fan base isn't stupid. They see the inconsistencies. They hear Flacco's words, and they're starting to ask the uncomfortable question the Browns have been avoiding. If Sanders is as good as everyone says, why is he not playing? That's a question no PR department can spin away. And as long as it goes unanswered, the trust gap will only grow, not just with fans, but inside the locker room, because players see it too. They see who's balling out in practice. They see who's getting opportunities. and they know when the two don't line up. That kind of disconnect fractures teams. Slowly, then all at once. Right now, Cleveland is at a tipping point. If they keep pushing a narrative that clearly doesn't match the reality on the ground, they risk losing the locker room, they risk losing the fans, and they risk losing the one quarterback on the roster who might actually be ready to lead. There's still time to fix it. Not much, but enough. It starts with honesty. Admit the reps weren't fair. Acknowledge that expectations for Sanders were too low. And most importantly, give him a real chance. Not scout team snaps, not empty promises, actual first-team reps, actual game situations. Let the talent speak, because here's the truth. If Shedeur Sanders isn't ready, the field will show that. But if he is, and everything so far says he is then holding him back, isn't just a mistake. It's sabotage. The Browns can no longer claim they didn't know. The receipts are out. The film is out. The voices are getting louder, and that includes Flacco's. This is the part of the story where Cleveland has to decide who they want to be. A franchise stuck in old habits, protecting decisions instead of results, or a team willing to admit they got it wrong and bold enough to pivot. Make no mistake, this is bigger than one preseason, bigger than one rookie. This is about culture, about whether performance still matters, about whether players can trust that doing everything right still earns you a chance. Sanders has held up his end. He's practiced, he's prepared, he's shown maturity beyond his years, he's respected in the room, he's respected outside of it, and yet he's being sidelined for reasons no one can explain without using words like politics, hierarchy, or favoritism. That's not just bad football, that's a dangerous precedent. And in a league where every snap counts, where careers can shift in a single quarter, wasting this moment would be unforgivable, not just for Sanders, but for the team that needs him more than they realize. The irony of it all? Cleveland has seen this story before, promising quarterbacks buried under bad timing, leadership fumbling the few chances they've had at real stability, and now, history is knocking on the door again, wearing a different jersey, speaking with a different cadence, but holding the same warning. This time, it comes in the form of a rookie who hasn't just met expectations, he's quietly shattered them, who hasn't just waited his turn, he's outpaced the ones in front of him while standing still. And instead of being celebrated, he's being erased. That's what makes this story so hard to swallow. It's not about development curves or learning systems. It's about how fast a team will bend reality just to protect a decision they made months ago. A decision that now looks shaky at best, negligent at worst. Behind the scenes, players are cautious. Coaches feel the pressure. And execs, they're scrambling to hold the narrative together while cracks keep showing through. Because every time Gabriel misfires, every time Flacco plays it too safe, every time Sanders nails a 2-minute drill with the scout team, people take notice. You can't unsee it anymore. The excuses have worn thin. The talking points don't land like they used to, and the silence from the top, it's deafening, especially when the player they're hiding could very well be the one who saves the season. Sanders doesn't need anyone to fight his battles for him, but Flacco did, and that act, intentional or not, shifted the balance. It took this from a quiet injustice to a public reckoning, because now the spotlight is fixed, it's not moving, and everything done from this point forward will be measured against that truth. If the Browns double down and continue to box Sanders out, they'll be doing it in full view. No more mystery, no more confusion. It'll be a conscious choice to ignore talent, a decision to protect optics over outcome. And in this league, that choice rarely ends well. But if they pivot, if they give Sanders the chance he's earned, that changes everything. Because buried beneath all the drama, the politics, the dysfunction, there's still football to be played. There are games to be won. And there's a quarterback in that room who just might be capable of doing exactly that. What he needs isn't praise, it's opportunity. He doesn't need a campaign. He needs reps. He doesn't want the job handed to him. He wants to compete for it like every great player should. And if the Browns have even a shred of self-awareness, they'll realize this isn't just about saving face anymore. It's about salvaging potential, about proving to every man in that locker room that merit still matters. The road back starts with accountability. It starts with truth, not behind closed doors, but out loud. It starts with someone in power stepping up and saying, "We got it wrong, we underestimated him, we buried him, and now we're going to fix it." That's leadership. That's how you earn trust again. Not with slogans, not with spin, with action. Sanders has already done his part. He's handled everything thrown at him with class. No complaining, no leaks, no drama, just execution, just preparation, just quiet dominance. But quiet doesn't mean invisible, and invisible doesn't mean irrelevant. What Flacco reminded everyone is that even if the building tries to shut a story down, the game always tells the truth. You can't hide it, you can't edit it, you can't crop it out of the footage forever. Eventually, the story breaks through, and when it does, the only question left is how the team responds. Do they evolve, or do they retreat? Right now, the Browns are standing at that exact crossroads. One path leads to redemption, the other to another wasted chapter in a franchise already full of them. They can keep pushing Gabriel because he fits the original plan. They can keep leaning on Flacco because he's safe. Or they can rewrite the plan, take the risk, let the one guy who hasn't been allowed to fail actually play, because if they don't, they'll watch him leave, and they'll watch him shine somewhere else. And fans will never forgive that. Worse players won't forget it either, because if the best guy on the field can be benched just because the wrong person drafted him, what does that say to the rest of the team? What does that tell the locker room about effort, about trust, about fairness? These things don't just live on the practice field. They bleed into culture, into chemistry, into the kind of unspoken language that wins or loses games when everything's on the line. Sanders isn't asking for special treatment. He's not lobbying for a fast track. All he wants is a lane, just enough space to show what he can do, just enough fairness to let the game decide. If the Browns can't give him that, they don't deserve what he brings, because this league doesn't reward fear, it punishes it. And Cleveland, if they're not careful, are about to learn that the hard way. Time's running out, the preseason window is closing, decisions are being made. And whether they want to admit it or not, the team already knows what they see every day in practice. The fans are catching on, the league is watching, and most of all, Shedeur Sanders is waiting. What happens next will define more than a quarterback room. It will define whether this franchise finally grows up or once again lets greatness walk out the door without ever giving it a real shot.